guys, I am Jim Bob. Welcome back to Massey Manor. It's Massey Monday, and we are making some progress on our farm here. And we've already put, over the course of the 2 episodes that you've seen, we've already put in over 11 hours of work onto this farm. So just to give you a sort of a brief update as to where we are. In the last episode, we finished ploughing everything. In this episode, I've already cultivated some of these fields, as you can see, and there is actually a gap here between the 2 fields. It's not a very big one, but the way the overlap works, you don't always see it. So there's the separation, as you can see, between field 6, which we don't own, and field G1, which we've ploughed and cultivated to repurpose it into a crop field. Everything that we have here has been cultivated. We haven't cultivated field 1 yet. I'm going to do that now, and then once that's done, we're going to get underway with seeding. So let's go grab actually we'll use the 3000 series. So let's close the door, open the window, oops, engine on. Let's go grab our cultivator. Now, I've had to turn off the ground response mod in preparation for this episode, simply because of the way the seeder bounces. It's going to cause all sorts of issues, and we're going to have all sorts of patches in our ground, in our planting, if we don't do that. So I will hopefully be turning that back on in the not too distant future. It depends when Black Sheep patch their Massey pack. But you'll see here what I mean when I said in a previous episode about the cultivator only working at 5 miles an hour. And it's not just this cultivator as well. If we go into the cultivators, I actually leased a separate one to help off camera. And I hired this one here, the Laborto, and this is also by Black Sheep Modding. And I've used this one before, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's a great little 4.2 meter cultivator, and you can see has a 100 horsepower requirement and a 10 mile an hour operating speed. I actually hired that and used it with this tractor, which has 102 horsepower, and again it went at 5 miles an hour. So I think it's more of an issue with the tractors themselves rather than the cultivators. I haven't tried this cultivator with a non-modded tractor, so I can't say 100% whether this has any issues with other machinery or not, but it definitely has issues with these Masseys here. So you can see, look, we're moving at just 5 miles an hour as opposed to 10, even though we are outstripping the power requirements on this cultivator by around about 15 to 20 horsepower. It's still not, moving faster than 5 unless we're going down a hill. So that's something that obviously needs to be addressed. I'm sure Black Sheep will get on that pretty quickly when they come back from their break, which will be in a few days. I think they come back on the 4th or the 5th. They've had a little break since the mod contest for a week or two, for a couple of weeks. So I expect them to sort of start working on updating this pack. And this map has actually had an update as well. Had an update on Friday. Which confused some people because it did say that it was adding season support. That is obviously for the PC version, not for our version. On consoles, seasons does not exist as a console mod, and if it ever will, that's a hell of a long way off. So the mod notes, or the patch notes for the mod update for this map, were shared across both systems. So all the changes were implemented into the patch, but only some of those changes apply to consoles. So the season patch applied to the PC version of the map. All other changes applied to both PC and console versions of the map, which included a little bit of work on Field 17. I'm not entirely sure what needed to be done on that. I haven't seen any issues on previous sort of playings about with this farm and this map in general since they expanded it a couple of months back. And they also did some bush work. Apparently they changed some bushes and some hedges Again, not entirely sure where that happened, but I'm sure somebody out there will be able to let me know. If you do know exactly where those changes were, then please do let me know in the comments section. What I'm thinking of doing is, after we've run this for a few episodes, I will open up a new version of this farm privately, just to see if some of those changes become apparent, easily, because it did suggest that a new save would be required, and I don't know if that was to affect the changes on field 17 and the bush changes, or if that was simply because of the season support that was added in. So it may be that the cosmetic changes that they made are absolutely fine, no restart is required, but obviously if you on PC and you want to run seasons, you do need a restart, or whether you just need to do a restart regardless. That hasn't been made readily apparent, and of course they're not there to ask because they're on holiday right now. So more information still to kind of come to the surface on that one there. Okay, so we've finished cultivating the field. I'm just tidying up those little thin strips where I've not quite managed to catch everything. Right, this little patch just here. But apart from that, this field is done. So we're going to be moving on to planting, and we need to decide what kind of crops we're going to go with. I've also been thinking about where I'd like to take the farm in terms of animals. Now, generally, I do tend to prefer working with sheep and with cattle. Cows obviously are a great source of daily income with the milk that they generate, and obviously give you a nice useful amount of slurry and manure, as well as as byproducts, which you can then use on your fields to cut down on your fertilizing costs. And sheep require very little work and give you a lot of wool, which is always very useful. And I have experimented with running a pig farm to a degree on Fent Farm, but that farm is a mix of all three. It has all three animal types. So I'm thinking that the primary focus of this farm might be a pig farm. So that means we need to start thinking ahead to getting enough money to buy in some pigs. We don't need a huge amount to get us started because they breed so quickly, but we do need a decent number. So we're probably looking at around 20 pigs or so to get us started. And a pig, that's 60,000 that we're going to need just to be able to afford them. Then we need to make sure that we have all the grain types that we're going to need, and we're also going to need some root crops. Now, having learnt from Fent Farm very recently that the root crop requirement is very, very small in their food trough. We don't need a huge amount, but I would like to work on that. And I've also been thinking about what type of root crop. Now, we've done beets on this channel, but we haven't done potatoes yet. So I'm thinking that potatoes might be a great choice of root crop. So if we have a look, I think this could become a really, really good little potato field here. I might need to actually just trim the top off it. I haven't decided what to do with that yet, but I think going forward this could be a really good potato field. So let's have a look at the equipment costs for potatoes. We're a long way off from being able to do it, I know that much, but in terms of the harvesting equipment, you can see it's pretty expensive. Horsepower requirements are slightly above what we can do, so we would have to have that in mind as well. 110 horsepower, it's not too far past what our 3000 series can do, and obviously we would need a specialist planting piece of equipment as well, so we would need one of these. That's 120 horsepower. Again, it's slightly above what we can do. It just means that we'll be running slow. We can still use it, but we'll be running slow, unless the power requirements become maybe a little bit too high in terms of electrical power. It needs 88 kilowatts. Our 3000 series only has 65 kilowatts. Let's see what it does have fully upped. 75. So again, we may potentially have an issue there as well. We'll see how that looks going forward. But for now, let's get started with some seeding. So let's close our window, close our door, open our window. Let's go pick up our seeder. I'm going to use the 600 for this one. So there is our seeder. Now we don't have any seed in it, and we don't have any placeables for seed on the farm. So we need to open the cover. We're going to turn the engine off. We'll open the door so we can get out. What we are going to need to do is drop a pallet in there. Now the seeder has a capacity of 500 litres, so not exactly huge. That means one pallet of seed will fill, one big bag of seed will fill our seeder twice. So let's get hooked up. And actually we're going to want the rear weight for this as well, for a bit of counterbalance. There we go. So we need our pallet forks. I think those are the ones on the right. Yes, they are. No, that's the bell spikes. Pallet forks are on the left. So let's try and do this in first person if we can. There we go. Oop. Spike through at a weird angle there. So we want a pallet. Oh, I just collected a nugget by mistake. So we're a little bit too high and a little bit off center. Didn't mean to collect that nugget, but never mind. There we go. So we've got our pallet. Let's refill our seeder. There we go. So 500 litres of seed. We'll hang on to this because we're going to need to obviously top up our seeder at a later date or a later time. Let's close the cover down and let's go start planting some seed. So we'll start out here. This is the other issue I've seen with the seeder as well, is that when you reload using pallets, obviously it's going to pile up in the center or at the point where you're tipping that seed in, and then when you close the lid, it just the little top of the mound just shows through the cover there. So that needs a little bit of work as well, but that'll obviously go down as we continue to plant and we use up some of that seed. So let's have a look at our crops. We should have a little bit of everything. Got some wheat, barley, a lot more canola, and beans, and sunflowers. So we can only plant the main grains. So we can't plant corn. We don't have a corn planter as part of this pack yet. So I think we're going to go with some barley on this field. Turn this on and off we go, and you'll see that it's running nice and smooth. As I said, this is because I've turned off ground response just so that it doesn't bounce all over the place. And we get a nice clean seed bed. I will hope to turn that back on as soon as we'll definitely turn it back on as soon as the pack gets updated and that issue gets resolved. But until then, we'll leave it off for now. So I'm going to go ahead and plant, and I will catch up to you when this field is finished off. So one of the little problems I'm encountering with this is when the ground is uneven, and you can see it just lifts the seeder up. Look there. The wheel isn't spinning because it's not making contact with the ground. And what that does is creates these little patches where you're unable to plant, so you have to be kind of a little bit creative. Try and find an angle where it will actually plant for you. So that's something else you need to be aware of with this particular seeder. Because of the way it's shaped and the size of it, again, I don't quite think the weight properties are correct with this, which is why it keeps bouncing in ground response. But every now and again you get a little patch where there's a sort of a divot in the ground and part of the seeder lifts off, and when that happens it stops planting and your tractor gets a little burst of acceleration. Oops. Drove into the lake there. So you can see it happened over here. Just there. And just coming up here as well, where there was a little divot, and because of that it stopped it from planting. Let's see if it happens again as I go over. Yeah, just there, you see? It skipped over because the height prevented you from planting, so you've got to really get in there at the right angle and the right position to sort of go over that little bit of patch and make sure that you're actually getting your seed down. It's a little temperamental, but one way to look at it is, you know, this is old equipment. It's going to be less reliable in real life application in some cases than the much bigger, more powerful, more advanced modern day seeders. So not having done any farming myself ever in my life, having no experience of farming, I can't say whether or not this would be a more realistic characteristic in that respect, but it would seem to me a logical sort of example or reasoning for that happening, perhaps. So because of those problems that we were having even without ground response turned on, I figured I may as well try it with ground response on and see if it makes any difference. But you can see what I mean about it bouncing and skipping. There we go. It's skipping patches like this. Now, it might be partly down to the speed that's causing some of the issues. So what I'm going to do is actually reduce my cruise control down to 6 and see if planting at a slower speed actually helps to calm down some of that bouncing. See if it still skips patches if it bounces up, because obviously the faster you go, the more likely it is to bounce too high and bounce completely off the field. So there we had quite a big bounce, but it didn't bounce up high enough to actually stop planting. So maybe that's the key to working with this, is just to run it at a slower speed. Not run it at 9 miles an hour, run it at 6. And maybe that will do the planting for us. Seems to be performing a little bit better by doing it that way. So we'll carry on planting the rest of the field and see what happens. So you can see even at 6 miles an hour, we're still getting these skips and bounces where it's bouncing out of the ground and just not planting. It's definitely an issue, even with ground response on, and we have problems with ground response when it's turned off. We get even worse problems when we turn it on. So I think we're going to have to turn ground response off again just to get our seeding done without missing huge chunks of the field like that. Okay, so field 1 is done. We're going to do field 3 next, and we're going to do some wheat on this field here. So let's get that underway. Again, you can see that uneven ground caused us to miss huge chunks just there. So we will have to obviously do some cleaning up on the field once we're done. See if I can get a nice low shot to show you the sort of the imperfections in the ground, the way the terrain has been sculpted. There you can see one half of the seeder just lifted off the ground completely, which is why nothing got planted. I'm going to need to try and find the right angle like that where we can actually get planting done. So I'm going to go ahead and plant wheat on the rest of this field. Ooh, big jump there because of that bump. I'll finish planting this field with wheat, and then we'll come back once that's done. Okay, we're about to run out of seed. Ah, look at that. Just about finished the pass. So, let's get in position. There we go. Seeder off, cover open. And let's get our other 600 with the seed bag, and let's go top up our seeder. There we go. 500 litres of seed filled in very, very quickly. Okay, next field. Now this is going to be a little bit trickier, and the reason for that is when I was cultivating I accidentally clipped the edge of this grass verge that I'd left. So I need to replant. Let's turn the seeder off. I need to replant a little strip of grass first. I need to do it in a way to be careful not to actually plant on the field that I've created. So that should do that. That should grow back. And then I'll just have to be careful when it comes to cultivating that section there. So now we need to choose a crop for this field. So we're going to go with canola on this field, I think. Plant a little bit of everything. In fact, no, we'll go with wheat on this one as well. Let's go with wheat on this one as well. So let's lower the seeder, turn on, and off we go. Now I'm expecting to have all sorts of issues on this edge of the field here with it not planting properly, just simply because of how uneven this ground is now, and this huge great big lump here, look. Yeah, there we go. That's what I kind of expected. It may well be that we are completely unable to plant on that. We'll have to see as I do the clear up on the field afterwards. So I'm going to carry on planting wheat on field G2 here, and again we will come back a little bit later. Okay, so I finished doing this field, but lots and lots of patches, as you can see, where the seeder just refused to plant. So I'm going over those areas now, trying to get the seeder in at the right angle where I can actually get it to plant and cover up those patches. Some of them I think we're just going to have to leave. I don't think it's going to be possible to get the right angle, but we'll persevere, try and do as best a job we can. But definitely some issues on some of these fields with this seeder. See it just skipping and bouncing, refusing to go in. It means a lot of doing this, attacking from strange angles just to try and get those spots to fill in. I did try running the second half of this field with a worker to see if that would make any difference, and it didn't. As you can see, this is the second half that I'm working on, and still a lot of these patches. It's slightly worrying for the future of this seeder on this farm. We may have to reconsider using it going forward and try something a little bit different. We may have to go for a different seeder. I'll persevere. Excuse me, my voice is a little bit croaky today. We'll persevere. We'll stick with it for a while, see what we can do. But we may end up keeping it until the pack gets patched and then go back to it rather than sort of selling it off. But as things stand right now, this is proving to be a lot more hassle than it needs to be, planting with with this seeder. Okay, so having cleared up on field 2, we're now working on field 4. Trying to I say field 2, field G2. You can still see in the distance those little patches there where we haven't been able to plant. Not a lot we can do about that, unfortunately, but we are pushing forward. We're now planting canola on field 4. I'm hoping this field is going to be a lot smoother to plant on, because the surface of this one is a fair bit smoother. It's not quite so bumpy and rutted. It may well be that going forward we have to sort of convert field G2 back to grass if we're going to stick with small equipment. If we move to larger equipment, then we can obviously look at maybe combining it into part of field 4 here. But as things stand, this seeder just does not work very well on some of these fields. So we'll have to be selective with where we use it, if we use it at all. So far we haven't had any real sort of planting issues on this field. The only sort of gaps that are there are the ones that I've made, trying to keep a straight line on this sort of angled field, but it's a much smoother surface, much better for planting. So this seeder is actually performing pretty good on here. Obviously because we're planting canola, it's just very, very thirsty right now. There we go. We are now out of seed, so once again it's time to call in our other 600 and bring some more seed up. This field's been coming along really, really nicely. All of those issues that we had on the previous fields with the seeder bouncing or not really planting properly, only had tiny little issues in a couple of spots. For the most part, it's been a joy to use on this field here. So we've done most of it already. It's just been so quick, so smooth, no having to go back and keep touching up areas to fill in the gaps that have been left behind. And we've burnt through almost another 500 litres of seed already. That's the last pallet that we have there, loaded up on the forks in front of us there. That's the last 500 litres of, or last 1,000 litres of seed that we have. So we're definitely going to have to buy some more. I'm hoping that we can actually finish everything else off, because once we've done this field here in canola, the last field we have to plant is what was field G1, and that's going to become a soybean field, so hopefully that will be nice and easy to plant on as well. Well, let's quickly top this up again. It's not quite a full pallet, this one. Actually missing a little bit of seed. I'm not sure where that disappeared to. Well, there we go. Oops, nearly lost it off the forks there. So let's just move this up a little bit. I'm hoping I can get the rest of this field done with the load of seed in here, so that I don't have to rush out and buy more seed just to finish off planting on this one. But we'll see how that goes. So there we go, that's the end of the field. So let's go get into position on field G7, or G1. We're going to plant soybean on that field, so let's change the seed. There we go. I'm not worried about running out of seed on this one, because we still have around 450 to 500 litres of seed left in the bag, plus what we've got in our seeder here. And the deployment rate of seed for soybean is a lot lower than it is for canola, so we should be fine. As with the last field, this one is actually going really smoothly as well. Not really any issues. A couple of little tiny patches here and there where the seeder skips because it hits a bump. But apart from that, it's been pretty smooth sailing all the way. And you can see how few seeds we've used in comparison to the canola. Look how much we've planted already. And we've used, what, 300 litres of seed to do this? That's it. So we'll easily be able to finish off this field with our remaining seed bag, because we're almost out of seed now. So that's good. We don't have to worry about running back to the store and buying any more bags of seed just to finish the field off. We can actually do it all in with the stock that we have already. Just going to grab these little patches just here. Here you can see where it has skipped slightly. If I just attack from a different angle, it just clears those up nicely. There we go. So I'm going to finish this field off, and then that'll be it for the episode once all of our seeding is done. So not long left now. So there we go, that's the last strip. All of our fields are planted. So, let's take this back, get it cleaned up and put away. All of our planting is now finished. We have nothing left to do. So it's time to bring a close to this episode of Massey Manor. When you come back on Thursday for midweek Massey, then we will look at fertilizing our crops and then doing a little bit of tree trimming, because I know that from personal experience on this farm, some of these are going to, some of these trees around the edges of the field are going to cause problems with low-hanging branches that will hit or cause a collision with the combine when it's harvesting. So we'll be getting rid and pruning back some branches on some of those trees just to make that a nice, easier transition. So that's it for this episode of Massey Manor. Thank you very much for watching. Please do check out my other farms as well. Big Bud Farm is every Tuesday and every Saturday. On Wednesdays we pay our weekly trip to American Outback, and on Fridays we pay our weekly trip over to Fent Farm on a Drummond map for Fent Friday. Thanks for watching. I am Jim Bob, and I will catch you back with midweek Massey on Thursday.